Okay, thanks, Lance, for hitting record. We can get started, and I'll just ask my colleagues to keep an eye on the attendance and let anybody else who joins late into the Zoom. Okay, hello and welcome. Good evening. I'm David Nelson, the Deputy Director of Strategic Outreach and Partnerships at the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our first info session for the CARE grant, the Cultivating Access, Rights, and Equity grant. It's wonderful to see so many familiar names and some new ones as well. We're very excited to introduce this year's Notice of Grant Opportunity. This is the third year of our Outreach and Education Grant program focused on worker benefits and protections. I'd like to introduce our team. On the call is Lance Tracy and Caroline Woodrow, who manage the CARE grant program. And please take a moment to enter your name and organization into the chat so we can be aware of who's attending tonight's session. A few reminders, please remain on mute through the presentation. Throughout the presentation, though, feel free to enter questions into the chat. We will do our best to answer them during the Q&A session at the end. And for any questions that we can't answer at this time or need to clarify further by speaking to our colleagues in the department, we will make sure to include those questions and answers in the official Q&A document that gets published next week. If you're having any technical issues, please message Lance Tracy or just drop a line in the chat. We'll do our best to troubleshoot any tech issues. But if for some reason you cannot hear the presentation, we will also be posting the recordings of this session as well as a PDF of the slides on the New Jersey Department of Labor website underneath the Notice of Grant Opportunity posting. And finally, before we start, I just want to share who this opportunity is open to. So public and private nonprofit organizations, state tribal governments with 501c3 statuses, faith-based organizations, municipal, county, or state government entities are all qualifying organizations. For-profit businesses cannot serve as a grantee or a sub-grantee, only as a vendor for a grantee. I just want to make that clear before we start in case there are folks here representing for-profit entities. I don't want you to have to sit through a webinar on a Monday evening if you do not need to. Additionally, this grant is not for employers to educate their employees. Businesses and employers have their own set of obligations, and these grant funds cannot be used to educate your own employees about their work rights and benefits. Okay. So just wanted to review our team here at NJDOL. All of us play a role in supporting the grantees. We have Holly Lowe, who's the director of our office, myself, David Nelson, who's the deputy director. We have Rebecca Glynn, the policy manager, who provides guidance and assistance to grantees to help them better understand NJDOL's programs and rights. And then Caroline Woodrow and Lance Tracy, who provide fiscal and programmatic support for administering the grant. Okay. The information covered today is directly related to the CARE grant. While we are providing an overview of the programs covered under the grant, this is not a training on those programs or rights. We will spend the majority of our time in this session covering the specifics of the CARE grant, the application components, and tips on how to complete the application. Questions about programs or specific rights may need to be answered offline or as a part of the question and answer document the department releases next week. And if you're newer to worker benefits and protections, don't worry, our team will provide a full training on the programs and laws after the grants are awarded to the grantees. Okay. So here's some helpful background and context on the grant program. The 2018 New Jersey Earned Sick Leave Law mandated that the New Jersey Department of Labor implement a multilingual outreach program. In 2019, the Temporary Disability and Family Leave Insurance expansion mandated that the New Jersey Department of Labor allocate funds for outreach, and specifically that we enter into contracts with community-based organizations. The CARE grant was designed to meet both those requirements, both those laws, and the goal is to reach workers who are among the least likely to have meaningful access to paid leave in New Jersey. To that end, we also intentionally designed it with an equity framework. And we are looking to establish collaborative relations with trusted community-based organizations throughout the state who demonstrate capacity and experience of providing outreach, education, and assistance to community members. One of our main goals is to leverage strategies that will have the greatest impact on eliminating the racial, social, economic, and gender inequities that exist when it comes to accessing paid leave and work rights in New Jersey. And finally, in 2013, the program was expanded to include unemployment insurance outreach and education. We're excited to continue that work in 2024 and expand into work rights outreach as well. Okay, just review some of the CARE grant objectives to help you better understand what we're looking for in grant applications. So as I mentioned, the goal is to establish collaborative relations throughout the state to accomplish these objectives. One grantee may not check every box, but this is what our goals are for the grant program overall. So the first is to increase workers' and employers' knowledge and understanding of their rights and benefits through methods that are community-centered, culturally relevant, and accessible, and language-specific. The program is designed to allow community groups to design outreach, education, and assistance strategies that fit the communities they serve. There is no one tried and true method here. Another goal of the CARE grant program is to build the capacity of grantees to provide this information to a diverse range of workers and employers. We aim for the CARE grantees to increase their understanding of these laws and programs and to increase their capacity to provide this information and assistance to community members. So this could look like training your agency staff on DOL programs and workplace rights to support the members of your community that you serve. Another goal is to develop and distribute effective multilingual outreach and education materials that meet New Jersey's language access needs. So if your agency has multi-language capabilities, there are many opportunities throughout the CARE grant cycle to partner with the department to engage in translation review and user testing of tools and applications. Those activities are all billable to the CARE grant contract, and you may want to consider that as an option you might want to, if you're considering that as an option, you may want to draft your budget accordingly to account for time and resources that go into that work. And then finally, another objective is to expand workers' and employers' exposure to resources that increase access to benefits and enforcement. So we aim for workers and employers to take meaningful action regarding access to paid leave, work rights, and unemployment benefits, whether it's workers applying for benefits, seeking resolution with their employer, or filing a complaint with the New Jersey Department of Labor. Additional objectives are learning from focus communities about how New Jersey Department of Labor's outreach, education, and communication on these programs can be improved, and enhancing collaboration between the New Jersey Department of Labor and community-based organizations that serve New Jersey workers. The insights you are able to provide as a grantee engaging in outreach and education is immensely valuable to the department as it helps us administer the programs and enforce work rights. And then finally, we seek to leverage the work of other state, county, and local agencies to help promote labor standards, outreach, and education. So we are also interested in building deeper partnership with other state, county, and local agencies to ensure equitable access to these programs and rights. We know many of you on this call have applied for funding in the past or are current grantees, so we want to highlight some key differences for this year's grant. As you probably noticed in the NGO announcement, the grant program was expanded to include work rights. This includes minimum wage, overtime, wage theft and payment, and misclassification. Optionally, you may also use work rights funding to engage in outreach and education on the Temporary Workers' Bill of Rights as well. If you apply for work rights funding, you must do outreach on the first four, though. That's minimum wage, overtime, wage theft, and misclassification. To help our staff better assess your application, please make it known in the application questions if you plan to do outreach on Temporary Workers' Bill of Rights. The application interest form is a new feature for 2024. The letter of intent is no longer required. To express interest in applying for the CARE grant and to gain access to the SAGE platform in which you submit your application, please complete the application interest form. I'm going to ask one of my team members to drop a link to that form in the chat. So if anybody has not completed it yet and wishes to do so, they can. And once you do, our team will follow up and make sure you're assigned the appropriate Sage access to complete the application. And then finally, the last change for 2024 is that there is a new template in the NGO. There's a template to follow for the organizational commitment and capacity this year. I'll review this document later in the presentation, but the change is to help our team better assess how your organization will integrate the grant into your existing work. Okay, so as I mentioned, I will do a quick review of the 4 programs and rights covered by the CARE grant for folks who might be new to this opportunity. As I stated earlier, we will be doing a deeper training and overview of the programs after we make awards for grantees. This is just to give you the highlights, and I really encourage you all to explore the New Jersey Department of Labor website to get more information on the programs as you complete your applications. So the New Jersey Earned Sick Leave is the first one, and it covers most employees in New Jersey. There are a few exceptions, but the overwhelming majority of New Jersey workers are covered, and the law is enforced regardless of one's immigration status. In terms of leave, the law mandates employers of all size provide full-time, part-time, and temp employees with up to 40 hours of earned sick leave per year to care for themselves or loved ones. This can include physical or mental health, COVID testing, quarantining, and vaccination appointments to cope with domestic and sexual violence, and appointments required or requested by a child's school. Workers earn 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours they work, up to 40 hours per year, or an employer can provide it in one lump sum. The New Jersey Department of Labor also enforces additional state labor laws. Our department enforces these laws to protect all workers regardless of immigration status. The first one covered under work rights funding is overtime. So most workers are owed 1.5 times regular hourly rate of pay for hours worked over 40 hours a week. To understand if a worker qualifies for overtime, though, it is important to understand employee classification. So classification or misclassification is one of our outreach components under work rights this year. And employee misclassification is the practice of an employer improperly classifying employees. A common example of misclassification is classifying employees as independent contractors, sometimes referred to as 1099 employees. And an additional work rights under this bucket of funding is the minimum wage laws. So New Jersey is on a path to $15 minimum wage for all workers. The current rate for most workers in New Jersey is $15.13. There are important exceptions to this law, though. For example, agricultural workers are on a separate minimum wage timetable under the law and will scale up to $15 minimum wage until 2027. Also, tipped workers have a different minimum wage table from the $15 minimum wage of other workers. And finally, the last required work rights law that is a part of the work rights bucket of funding is the wage theft and payment laws. So workers are due the full amount of the wages owed for all hours worked and no less than the applicable state minimum wage. And as I mentioned earlier, optionally, you may engage in temporary workers' bill of rights outreach. And this is a law that gives new rights to many temporary workers. These rights apply if you work for a temporary help service firms and do certain jobs for client companies. So an example of the types of industries that are covered under the Temporary Workers' Bill of Rights are dry cleaning and laundry services and construction services. A full list of the workers that are covered under the Temporary Workers' Bill of Rights can be found on the New Jersey Department of Labor website and in the NGO. Next, we have the New Jersey Paid Family and Medical Leave programs. This is made up of the cash benefits that the New Jersey Department of Labor administers, along with the state and federal job protection laws. The program that the New Jersey Department of Labor administers are formerly known as the Temporary Disability Insurance Program and the Family Leave Insurance Program. Paid family and medical leave is for when you must stop working in order to care for yourself or a loved one. for pregnancy and recovery, bonding with a new child, including an adopted or foster child, or to cope with domestic or sexual violence. Most New Jersey workers are covered, and you apply to the New Jersey Department of Labor to receive your benefits. You can receive 85% of your average weekly wages and up to 26 weeks off for temporary disability and 12 weeks off for family leave insurance. You must meet earnings requirements with a covered employer though. Employers also must participate in these state public insurance programs and deduct payroll taxes for employees working in New Jersey, or an employer may choose to provide employees coverage through a private insurance plan that meets New Jersey's requirements. And finally, there's unemployment insurance. So unemployment insurance is a benefit program that financially supports people who recently lost their job through no fault of their own. In order to receive benefits and continue to get them each week, you must also be able to work, actively seeking work, available for work, and not refuse an offer of suitable work. Those who meet the requirements may receive benefits for up to 26 weeks during a one-year period as well. So I know I'm running through a lot of information here. I just want to remind folks that if you have specific questions, to drop them in the chat. We'll do our best to address them during the question and answer period. And just make sure we're utilizing that function if something comes up through. And I'll ask my colleagues just to make sure we're documenting them for that portion of this session. Okay. Next, I will review the grant activities that are allowed under the CARE grant. The activities cover outreach, education, and technical assistance and support to workers, employers, and service providers. These activities can include providing resources and information directly to individuals in person, virtually, or by phone. So this could look like hosting in-person or virtual events, workshops, and trainings. It could be coordinating phone banking, text messaging, or a door knocking campaign, or it could be attending and sharing information at community events or meetings, or through tabling and other engagement methods. An example we've seen from previous grantees is providing outreach materials on paid family and medical leave during intake processes for a social service program. Or it could be, we've seen organizations do tabling at community events. Another CARE grant activity is providing information indirectly. So this could look like developing and launching small-scale local ad campaigns. It could look like collaborating with partner organizations to distribute information. An example that we've seen from previous grantees is sending WhatsApp or text messages to members or running a hyper-local radio ads in languages other than English. It just all depends on what you think is best for your community of people. Another allowable activity is providing technical assistance. So this could look like counseling individuals on paid family and medical leave benefits, unemployment insurance benefits, or their work rates. It could also include training workers, employers, community organizations, and social service agencies on these programs and rights as well. An example we've seen from previous grantees is training small businesses on earned sick leave laws and other work rights and protections. There's also, you can engage in intake and complaint and application support. So this could look like listening to workers and employer grievances and offering guidance. It could be helping workers apply for paid family and medical leave or unemployment insurance benefits, or it could be supporting an employer who's helping worker apply for paid family and medical leave benefits as well. An example we've seen from previous grantees is holding walk-in hours and supporting people filing for unemployment insurance. Another allowable activity is materials development and language access. This could look like collaborating with the New Jersey Department of Labor on education materials, or working with the New Jersey Department of Labor on materials translated into relevant languages and reviewing those professional translations for readability. And finally, there's community-based research. So in collaboration with the New Jersey Department of Labor, it's testing new and existing materials and tools with workers and employers, or it could be hosting listening sessions with impacted workers or employers. We've seen an example we've seen from previous grantees is conducting listening sessions on paid family and medical leave and reporting those findings to the CARE grant team. It should be noted that the New Jersey Department of Labor, though, has limited capacity to facilitate those listening sessions, though. We are interested in partnering with community groups on listening sessions and focus groups, but the work needs to be driven and facilitated by grantees themselves. Other activities that are allowed under the grant are hiring and compensating your staff for conducting grant activities, participating in the department's trainings and care grant related meetings, and any printing costs that are associated with outreach materials. There are some important restrictions though. Organizations cannot utilize funds from this grant to file a complaint with the New Jersey Department of Labor on behalf of a worker or employer. Grantees cannot represent workers or employers in New Jersey wage collection proceedings or represent workers or employers in any NJDOL related enforcement activities. And organizations cannot utilize funds from this grant to represent workers or employers in an appeals hearing. And all of this information is in the NGO itself too. So don't feel like you need to rush and write it all down. Like I said, it's in the NGO, and we will be posting the slides and the recording of this video on the website. Okay. Focus populations. The focus populations for this grant program are based on the 2 pieces of legislation mentioned earlier, as well as documented research on the types of workers who are less likely to have meaningful access to paid leave and worker protections. A grantee is not expected to reach every focus population. Our hope is to reach as many of these focus populations as possible across all of the grantees. The focus populations include low-wage, part-time, underemployed, and unemployed workers, women, Black, Latinx, Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native American, immigrant, refugee, LGBTQ workers, workers with disabilities, veteran workers, young workers, and victims and survivors of domestic and sexual violence. Parents, including mothers, birthing parents, fathers, non-birthing parents, adoptive parents, and foster parents and family caregivers are covered as a focus population. And employees of child care and elder care providers, clients of domestic violence shelters, school communities, patients of hospitals, community health centers, and other healthcare providers and their caregivers are all covered focus populations. Other focus populations include workers in select industries and service providers. You can find a full and comprehensive list in the NGO, but low-wage workers from these focus industries who are disproportionately impacted by the lack of access to paid sick leave. Again, you can find all of these industries called out in the NGO itself. Temporary workers are also a focus population, so temporary workers who are placed in a temporary assignment by a help service firm to perform work in occupations designated by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So again, if you look, this all can be found in the NGO, or you can go to the New Jersey Department of Labor website to get the exact industries and occupations that are covered under the Temporary Workers Bill of Rights and as a focus population. And then finally, focus populations also include employers and service providers in the focus industries and or who are predominantly employed, workers in the previous, predominantly employ the previous mentioned populations. Also employers that may be less aware of these laws and programs or require additional information and education, including small businesses, businesses with immigrant, women, veteran, Black, Latinx, Asian American, Pacific Islander, or Native American owners are all focus populations. It's important to note that this grant is, again, not for employers to receive funds to reach their own employees. Employers have their own obligation to inform their employees. And while we acknowledge that these focus populations are listed here individually, there are definitely intersections between them, and those intersections are often heightened barriers to workers accessing these rights and protections. And we look forward to learning from you through the grant cycle about how those intersections make access and knowledge of programs more difficult for folks. Finally, one more important thing about populations listed here is that this is not a comprehensive list by any means. A population may not be explicitly listed in the NGO, but they would count as a focus population if they meet other criteria, such as being a low-paid worker. We are open to hearing about different types of underserved workers in your communities and how they can benefit from worker benefit and protections information. Eligible applicants. So as I mentioned at the top, nonprofit organizations and faith-based organizations are eligible applicants. They must have nonprofit IRS tax status. It's not limited to 501c3s, but nonprofits' mission and goals and proposed activities have to meet the intent of the grant program, just like any other organization. A national organization with a chapter or an affiliate in New Jersey would be considered in-state, but successful applicants must show that they are using grant funds only for activities that reach New Jersey populations. This includes out-of-state organizations that serve as fiscal sponsors for organizations based in New Jersey as well. Collaboratives are another option to consider. They provide opportunity for one application to reach multiple focus populations, provide services in multiple language, complete outreach and education, as well as applications assistance to community members, and could be a good fit for organizations that have a history of working together or have a shared vision for the work. A partner in a collaborative can be a national organization or out-of-state organization with an affiliate or chapter in New Jersey, similar to individual organizations. A collaboratives must identify a lead organization, though, who will be responsible for administering the grant. And finally, just to reiterate again, for-profit businesses cannot serve as grantees or sub-grantees. They may serve as vendors to a grantee, but not as a recipient of an award directly from the Department of Labor or as a sub-grantee and a collaborative. Some more information about collaboratives. They must just demonstrate a shared vision and goals, as I mentioned. And a lead organization must have the capacity to fulfill the reporting requirements of the grant. They must have the infrastructure to disperse funds, and they must have the ability to provide support to partner organizations as necessary. They must also have a clear work plan for how the collaborative will meet its goals, and a process for how it will operate. Finally, the required application interest form is only needed from the lead organization in a collaborative, but all the partners in the collaborative must be listed in that application interest form. Available funding. We are excited to release $2.2 million of funding this year. We encourage applicants, though, to consider pairing certain programs and apply for equal amounts of funding in those categories. It is most helpful for workers and employers to receive information on some of these programs in tandem. Specifically, the temporary disability insurance and family leave insurance program. These two programs can be overlapping for folks, and it is helpful to share information on both programs simultaneously. So our trainings are often done on both programs simultaneously. A lot of our outreach materials are framed around the paid family and medical leave programs, which comprise of the temporary disability and family leave insurance program. So it is often helpful for folks to think about their outreach strategies and their budgets for temporary disability insurance and family leave insurance on sort of like equal footing. So we encourage you to consider applying for equal funding in both categories. We also are encouraging folks to consider pairing earned sick leave and work rights funding, so making those two categories equal as well. So when you often discuss earned sick leave with folks, it's critical to provide additional information on other work rights, such as employer classification and or minimum wage. So again, it's possible you can apply for funding across all 5 areas that are available. We're just recommending that temporary disability and family leave insurance be thought of in a pair, and earned sick leave and work rights be thought of as a pair. Like I said, we're excited that this year we were releasing $2.2 million in funding. We have $500,000 available for earned sick leave, $500,000 for work rights. We have $400,000 for temporary disability insurance, $400,000 for family leave insurance, and $400,000 for unemployment insurance. Award amounts will vary based on the quality of the proposal, with the average award ranging from a minimum of $50,000 up to $200,000. Applications outside of this range will be considered, but applicants requesting less than $50,000 should consider applying as a part of a collaborative. We anticipate funding approximately 15 to 20 grantees, with collaboratives counting as one grantee. The actual number of grants awarded will be based upon the availability of funding and the quality and quantity of applications we receive. And please note there's no specific geographic requirement. Applicants can apply for activities in one or more municipalities or statewide. Next, we have some important details on the outreach materials that are available. You can see what we have on the CARE Grant website, and I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to drop that link into the chat so folks have it. This can help you think about what you'll use for outreach activities and what additional materials you may be in need of for engaging in outreach on these programs and rights. There's also helpful resources and information on the myleavebenefits.nj.gov, on mysickdays.nj.gov, on myworkrights.nj.gov, and myunemployment.nj.gov. We have more than a dozen handouts in many different languages covering these programs and rights, and we have materials focused on certain cases or populations as well, such as benefits for new and expecting parents handouts. And again, I encourage you to go to the newjersey.gov/labor/care. That is where we have all of our outreach materials, and we will be sort of uploading some new ones in the coming weeks as well. While we have some capacity to create new materials, it can take a while for us to develop them. So we do recommend that your outreach strategies rely on the existing materials available for the first 3 to 6 months of the grant cycle. We also want you to be aware that grantees must use New Jersey Department of Labor materials or get approval from the New Jersey Department of Labor on new copy language used in outreach materials. Your grantees are free to use any language that's on an outreach document or on the New Jersey Department of Labor website, and we'll provide greater detail and guidance in the post-award session with grantees on how to develop your own outreach materials and get approval on them. We can also provide print materials at no cost, but this can take several weeks. You may want to consider including printing in your budgets if this turnaround is a challenge for you. Printing is an allowable cost under the CARE grant, but we're more than happy to distribute materials. We have a print shop in our office, and we can ship those directly to your office as well. We place orders once a month just to ease the burden on our printing staff. The New Jersey Department of Labor can also request professional translations. And again, like I said earlier, the timeline for developing those products can be several months, and it depends on the capacity and other requests that we get for outreach material development. And as I mentioned, applicants can also include reviewing outreach documents and editing translation as a grant activity. And then just keep in mind for budgeting and considering the time it would take to review any handouts and web pages in your budgets as well. Okay, so now for some helpful guidance on the application process itself. You must register with NJ Start online. This is required for all organizations seeking to collect state funds. You can register with the New Jersey Department of the Treasury online at njstart.gov. Also, we recommend that you start familiarizing yourself with the application and SAGE as soon as possible. You need to complete, like I said, you need to complete the application interest form to gain access to SAGE. Again, that's the platform where you need to complete the application and upload all of your documents. The application interest form is due April 1st by 11:59 p.m. and the application itself is due April 3rd. And again, it's all through the SAGE platform. And there's a separate SAGE for New Jersey Department of Labor than other state departments, which is helpful to know. I know it's confusing, apologies, but if you need help finding the right SAGE, please just email the CARE Grant email address, which is caregrant@dol.nj.gov. Okay, so there are a few key components of the application. This includes the tax clearance. So grantees must upload their tax clearance certificate into SAGE. Laws require that as a precondition for awarding grants. Also, there's the standard assurances and certifications and general provisions. These are the standards for grantees across all of the department's grants. So by submitting the application, The applicant is implicitly agreeing to the terms and conditions, which can be found via a link in the NGO. And then finally, if you're applying as a collaborative, each partner in the collaborative must submit a partner letter as a part of the application process. And then the other components of the application process. So we have the grant application questions, the organizational commitment and capacity document, the work plan, and budget details. All right, these are the main sections of your application. And we're going to go over each one individually, but together they should not exceed more than 30 pages of documents. Finally, for the budget detail, that will need to be included. Lead organizations for a collaborative must submit budget details in Sage with their own costs, as well as the overall funds they are dispersing to subgrantees. In addition, the lead organization must provide each partner organization's budget detail in the Excel spreadsheet template that's provided in the NGO posting. And I think I have a link that we can share in the chat to that template for folks. So if one of my colleagues can drop that in the chat, that would be helpful. But I'll talk a little bit more detail about that when, well, Caroline will talk a little bit more detail about the budget process in a bit. Okay. So for the grant questions page, we strongly encourage applicants to answer each question individually. We suggest you copy and paste the questions from the NGO into a document and answer each one individually. This will help our team better assess your application. Applicants are required to answer each question. Organizations that are applying as a collaborative should submit only one question, only one response that covers all the partners. The questions are broken into 4 parts. The first part is the organization collaborative description and asks to briefly describe your organization's or collaborative's history, mission, program, and other key information. The second part is challenges and strategies, and it asks you to discuss the challenges of the communities that you're trying to reach and the strategies you will employ to overcome those challenges. The third section is for collaboratives only, and it asks collaboratives to discuss what brings your work together and the structures that exist or will exist to coordinate amongst each other. And then the fourth question is an optional question, which is just an opportunity for you to provide anything else that you would like to share with us that the questions didn't cover. As I said, we strongly encourage applicants to answer each question individually. There are about 9 to 10 questions for single organizations and about 13 to 14 for collaboratives, and most answers should be at least a paragraph with 3 to 5 sentences each. For the organizational commitment and capacity document, please use the NGO I mentioned earlier. Please use the template that I mentioned earlier that is in the NGO. It is a requirement this year, and it will help our team better assess your ability to successfully integrate this and manage the CARE grant. There are 2 sections and 3 sections for collaboratives in the organizational commitment and capacity. So the first section is to describe the organizational support that exists for implementing the proposed project. This includes a chart with staff names, titles, duties and responsibilities, and allocation of time. You can see I took a screenshot and put that in the slide here for the template that you should use. Section B is for describing your organization's methods for tracking and reporting proposed outreach and education activities. This can just be a written response. There's no need to format it into a chart. And then section C, which is for collaboratives only, is a section to describe the lead organization's capacity and or experience with dispersing funds to partner organizations and managing compliance and reporting for a collaborative. Again, this can just be a written response. There's no need to format section C of this document into a chart. Similar to the questions document, you may also want to consider cutting and pasting the instructions for sections B and C into the document and answering each part individually. The next part of the application is the work plan. This section should explain proposed activities, your implementation plan, and your timeline. For collaboratives, please submit 1 table per organization. Applicants may provide additional narrative to support the description of their work plan if they choose as well. The table includes 6 sections: activity description, target populations, language, quantity, when the activity will be conducted, and estimated deliverable. Do your best to estimate deliverables and when you will be engaging in the activity. Depending on your organization's experience with these laws and programs, staff training and building capacity for outreach and education can take time. In some instances, it takes several months. So please consider that when designing your work plan and setting your goals and deliverables. Your deliverables should be realistic and based on your organization's focus populations, particular strategies, and capacities. They will differ across grantees, be used to measure your progress, and can be adjusted during the grant year if necessary. And a few reminders for folks considering a collaborative application. We covered some of this information throughout, but I just wanted to reiterate it. All partners must provide, in a collaborative, must provide letters of commitment, budget detail, and other necessary application information to the lead organization. And then the lead organization submits all the application components on behalf of the collaborative. Lead organization must submit a budget detail in Sage with their own costs, as well as the overall funds they are dispersing to subgrantees. In addition, the lead organization must provide each partner organization's budget detail as an upload in the Excel spreadsheet template that is posted on the NGO's posting on the Department of Labor's website. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it over to Caroline, who is going to discuss the budget portion of the grant and walk us through a quick Sage demo for you all.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. It's a lot of great information. I've said this to David before. Every time I hear him talk about the CARE grant, I'm like, oh, I want to apply for that. But then I get to realize, oh, I work on the other end. Oh, well. So anyway, we're going to basically walk through your SAGE application today and show how you're going to enter your budgets and your supporting documents for your grant. The one thing I do like to point out right off the bat is that with our grant, there is a 10% administrative cap per our funding source. And we'll talk about that as we go through the template. Next slide. Okay, so at this point, many of you have already completed your application interest form. Just so current grantees are aware, obviously this opportunity is already populated into your SAGE as you already have application. So please, current grantees, if you do wish to pursue a 24 application, please fill out that applicant information form and populate your grant into your portal. If you are a first timer coming in and you filled out the application interest form and have not had access to Sage, as long as you fill out that AI form, I will be in touch with you over the next couple of days to confirm that you're still interested in pursuing an application, and I will link you to the CARE grant accordingly. Okay, but David had already mentioned earlier, most critical thing, you must register with New Jersey START, especially if you have never engaged in business with the state of New Jersey in a grant capacity form. That is how we pay you. Everything is has moved to electronic. So this is what links our grant to the Treasury Department. So it's critical that you get that New Jersey START registration taken care of if you're looking to take advantage of applying for the CARE grant. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so quick refresher, if you're returning to Sage, you already know this, but when you're in Sage, there are 3 roles that you can have in Sage. You are the authorized official. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. That is the person who can do everything in the grant. That is usually the CEO or the executive director. This is also the only role that if you are awarded a CARE grant opportunity, that can sign the contract. So I will show you where that information goes as we go through the contract, how we make that designation. The agency administrator, the AA role, you can basically do everything that the authorized official does, except sign the care grant contract when the time comes. You can actually initiate the grant in Sage. You can fill it out. You can even submit it. However, if you are awarded, again, only the AO role will be able to, uh, electronically sign the grant. And agency staff, you can basically view all things in Sage and you can create program and expense reports. However, an AA or an AO is the only role that would be able to submit those documents for you. Okay, next slide. Okay, the moment you've been waiting for, the live Sage demonstration. So let me just share my screen with you. Okay. And I'm going to walk you through Sage a little bit. Now, because I'm in a test environment of Sage, a lot of it might not look the same, but this is basically what you're going to see in Sage. And I deliberately have some of the dates off to remind myself that I'm in the test environment and not necessarily uh, the live Sage environment. Can you all, is my screen populating?
You're good, Caroline. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Lance. Okay,
Well,
so basically, once you have your login, you'll log into Sage, and the first thing that will populate is your dashboard. Now, if I've linked you to your Sage grant, you would see under this My Opportunity side, the Care Grant opportunity. Again, because I've already initiated the grant, it's already moved over to my tasks. So I have already started completing my Sage application. And just so you know, my name is Carrie Grant on this grant. Ha ha, get it? All right. So when you go in to your grant, a couple of things I just want to point out to Sage. The left side of your Sage grant tells you a lot of information. It tells you the name of your grant. And when you hover over the hyperlink, it will tell you, yes, that you're in the care grant, the status of your application. In this case, we're in process. The organization, Cary Grant is my organization, silly, I know, and my role is an authorized official. It also has the period dates and the due dates for this grant. Please do not think the grant is due August 31st. It is not. It is due April 3rd. Okay. So basically, down along this ribbon is where you're going to complete. Okay. So we're going to go quickly through these forms to give you a little bit of understanding of things, but again, your document landing page here will also give you a lot of information once it's completed. Again, because I'm doing a test grant, I've pre-populated a lot of my information. So that's why all this information is filled in. If you're going into Sage for the first time, this information will only populate after you've entered it and completed your budget. So my first form that I'm going in is to my applicant information form. This is where you're going to enter all the information about your organization, namely the folks who are going to be working on the grant, who's going to be signing the grant, and the address of your organization. As David mentioned earlier, you can only complete the care grant activities in the state of New Jersey. You may have an address for your organization that is not in New Jersey, but all activities for the care grant must be completed in New Jersey. Now you're probably seeing, ooh, a lot of attention going on. I didn't pre-populate everything on this page because I specifically wanted to show you that Sage will flag you if you are missing things that need to be completed. But for purposes of this demo, I'm going in applying as a collaborative. It's just going to open an additional page that you wouldn't see as a single applicant, but I just want to make sure if anyone is coming in new for collaborative, just what you're going to see when we get to that one page. So again, many red spots because I didn't put in my highest official, my authorized signatory, my CFO, or my grant manager, who by the way will be my best friend if you are awarded a grant. The staff managing the agreement, and again, the organization address. But I'm going to ignore all that and I'm going to move on. And that's going to bring us to the next form, which is our project location. Basically on that form, you're going to tell us where you're going to be working in the care grant. Okay. Just to make life easy and see, Sage is already telling me that, hey, Carrie Grant, you did not complete everything on the page. So there's a lot of flags on Sage that will help you in case you're missing information. It will not let you submit your application until you have all the information that's requested. Just to make life easy on this page, let's assume that my project is statewide. So I'm just going to check this box. If I wasn't a statewide project, perhaps I'm just working in one county or just some individual municipalities, you have the option of completing these two boxes here. Okay, so we're moving on, and the next form is basically the previous funding form. Now, we're only looking to see if you've had previous funding with the New Jersey Department of Labor. And look at me, I had funding last year for the CARES grant. So I basically completed that information here. But you know what? Oops, I forgot. I also had funding in 2022. So I'm going to go over here to this little plus button, and it's going to populate a second row. I'll see here, there's, miscellaneous drop down boxes. And let's just say I had funding through the CARE grant, and I had it in 2022. And I also had a $55,000 grant then too. Okay, simple as that, just to create that additional line item. I have the option of saving that information here. And even if you use the next button saves for you as well. But I just want you to know that you have multiple options on a page. You have your save up here or your next form down below. Now here it is, the meat and potatoes of the grant. What drives your, well, half of the meat and potatoes. This is the budget portion of your grant. Okay, so basically our grant budget is divided into 3 pages. Your Schedule A, which is your direct and your administrative personnel. Your Schedule B, which is your administrative costs, non-personnel, and your Schedule C direct services. So I'll just talk to you a little bit about what we're looking for on this Schedule A page. This is where you're going to list all your staff on your grant. And I highly recommend that when you start with your budget, you always start with this page first. You want to make sure that everyone on your grant is properly compensated for. And I'll explain what that means as we go through the grant. Sage is kind of exacting on this page, like you're going to put in specific dollar amounts, and we don't have much flexibility with how we put them in here because of how the funding has to be divided. So you want to make sure you get this page taken care of. So Schedule B and Schedule C, if you need a little wiggle room between grant funding sources, you can do that. So I've decided on this grant that I'm coming in for all 5 sources of funding. And I had already worked out in my head, I wanted to come in for like a similar amount as I did, quote unquote, on my last 2 years of grants, roughly $55,000. And the first thing Sage is asking me over here is to upload your organization's fringe benefit rate. If you are electing to take, whether or not you're electing to take a fringe benefit rate, we need you to upload that document here. We have had situations where organizations have elected to, even though they have a fringe benefit rate, they don't want to draw down that money on the grant. That is certainly an option. However, you do need to include that in the document. And please follow the detail here, very important. The fringe benefit rate must be on a letterhead or in an Excel sheet, and it must be, if it's on the Excel, electronically signed and dated by the preparer. And boop, just uploaded right there. Okay, so for purposes of this demo, I've put 2 people on the grant. I have myself, I'm the CEO, Carrie Grant, and I'm making $100,000 a year. I'm only spending 1% time on the grant, and I have a 25% fringe rate. So once I enter all this information here, it will populate for me over here on the left side of the grant. And that comes out to a total of $1,000 in cost estimate for my salary, $250 for my fringe. Now, that's over the life of the grant. But remember, I said I want to take 5 sources of funding. So I now take this $1,000 and I divide it equally, because that's what I've determined is the time I'm going to spend on each category, among the 5 funding sources. And I do the same with my fringe rate. I divide that equally down here. Okay. And then again, if you notice, because I'm only spending administrative time on this grant, I have checked the box right there. So I've entered another staff member, the grant manager. I do all the work. My annual salary and wages is $75,000. I'm spending 50% time on the grant with a fringe benefit rate of 25% as well. Okay, the number's much higher amount on the grant. So a $37,000 500 salary, $9,375 in fringe. And again, I've broken those across equally amongst the 5 funding sources and the 5 fringe rate funding sources for the grant. And that completes my Schedule A. Now, the one thing we did do this year for the returning grantees, just to point this out, to make life a little bit easier, this originally used to be a 2-page form where you had to enter on a separate page a brief description of the position. We've now moved that to this page here, right below the position title name piece. So in this little box here, you'll just give us a brief description of what that person is doing on the grant. And as I've indicated here, CEO has oversight of the CARE grant activities, and the grant manager is managing all the activities of the CARE grant work plan, outreach, and education. Okay. So again, the Schedule A is really the trickiest piece of it because, like I said, Sage calculates how much money that you're able to put into those boxes. So that's why I always say, get this page taken care of first, and then you can back in to everything else if you're trying to meet a specific budget. Okay. Another handy tip, we're going to go on to Schedule B, is the Excel spreadsheet that we give out for you to use to complete your collaborative grant mirrors very closely this budget in Sage. So even if you want to play around with your budget in an Excel sheets format, you can certainly use that document to do so. However, you will need to enter it onto these pages for your as a single entity or the lead grantee. It's only the collaboratives that you'll be uploading the Excel spreadsheet. So on my Schedule B, I've decided to request 5% in indirect costs for this grant. You know, I have some overhead and whatnot associated with the grant. I'm going to request rent, some phone costs for my grants manager, and for copier use over the term of the grant. And I've indicated here that I've provided those supporting documents on these attachments in the upload section, and I'll show you where that goes. And again, this, you know, we can discuss a little bit more in detail on indirect cost. You are eligible or able to take up to 10% in indirect costs on your grant. However, you have to bear in mind that if you're going to do that, you're going to have to document it still because it's going to be consistent costs over the life of the grant. Plus, you also have to be mindful of any admin staff that you're putting on the grant. And because it's driven by category, again, that will limit how much you'll be able to take per category in admin costs. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the cost summary page. It's a little confusing because I can't show it to you on the 2 pages at once. I also decided I'm going to need some paper and copier ink because, you know, occasionally I'm going to need print out some things in the office. So I've added that to my budget. And again, with both of these line items, I've divided them across the life of my grant. I will point out, I decided I only wanted 5% in indirect costs for this grant because I wanted to just, you know, have a little hold back on a little admin in case maybe during the course of the grant year, I need to change things around. Okay. So on to our Schedule C. This is your direct services portion of your budget. And for the purposes of this grant, remember, I decided to apply as a collaborative. So you're going to see that I put 2 costs on this line. I'm putting for participant support costs because I know I'm going to do some trainings and sessions, and I'm going to be able to make, you know, so incentives for folks who are coming out to these sessions. And I've elected to take $250 in gift cards. And again, I've apportioned them over the life of the grant. Then I have a sub-grantee. So I put my sub-grantee here on my Schedule C. I'm working with Workers' Rights Incorporated, okay? And I have an agreement with them for $4,625. That's how much I'm going to compensate for that to them based on the activities they are going to do for the CARE grant. Okay, so my next form is our cost summary form, and that's basically going to show us where all our money went. Poor Sage. Sage is tired. Had a long day with me. Just takes a minute to populate. So now everything that we entered on that Schedule A, B, and C has now populated over to your cost summary. First thing I always like to do is scroll right down to the bottom and see how did I do with my admin cost. Ooh, crisis averted. I'm well within my admin cost range because I, divide it equally. My admin cost percentage is at 7.59. Now, each line item that I entered, I want to just show you this up at the top here. Okay, where is it at? Oops, sorry. Okay. My grand totals on each of my categories are showing. Okay. I have totals direct costs of 10,350. And I'm just wondering, my totals line is missing. Okay. Here it is. Okay, there we go. My grand total line of how much money I spent on the life of my grant for each category, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, was $56,000. Okay. Just to give you, while you're working on your grant, how I said with the indirect costs, how you're limited to 10%, thank goodness 10% is simple math. So of this grand total of my green line, which is my TDI line of $11,200, the max that I could take for an admin on this would be $1,112. But again, like I said, we already see right below, I only spent $850 in admin and my admin cost percentage is at 7.59%. Okay. So again, you can go ahead, feel free to enter your budget directly into Sage once you have the access, or use a spreadsheet right now if you're waiting for Sage access that we give you use with the collaborative grant. It will calculate the same way and give you the same formulas and breakdowns to do your grant. Okay, so you tackled your budget. This part is easy because David did such a good job explaining everything, but this is how you get it into Sage. On your grant application attachments page, you're going to upload that tax clearance certificate. You're going to upload your grant application questions. And again, can't reiterate enough the importance of how David said to cut and paste those questions from your grant and answer each question, completely below. Think of it as in third grade when we were all like so scared. Oh my goodness, I better tell the teacher exactly what they want to hear. But we do need to know that, we need to know exactly what you're looking to do with the CARE grant activities. And it's, if you can thoroughly describe that to us, it helps us to make a better, decision when we're reviewing your application. Okay, your organizational commitment and capacity form will be uploaded here and your work plan will be uploaded here. Now, remember I said earlier, I'm coming in as a collaborative, so I still have a couple of more documents that I need to upload. So because I'm a collaborative, that's why next form populated and my collaborative attachment page pops up. And remember, I'm working with my little group, Workers' Rights. I'm going to have to upload their work plan, their budget details, which is the spreadsheet, again, that Lance dropped in the chat earlier, and the letter of commitment. That's, again, the agreement between you and the partner to work together on this grant. What if you were a collaborative and working with multiple? No problem. Once you enter this information, just hit the little plus. It'll populate a whole other section for you to complete out if you should happen to have two collaboratives on your grant. Now, if there's any other document, and I'm going to confirm, even though, again, see, Sage is great. It's pointing out all the things I'm doing wrong on this grant. Okay, so miscellaneous attachments page, if there's anything that you want to provide to support in your budget. And here, because I, indicated indirect cost detail. I'm going to just do a little attachment here and tell you, how much I want to request for my rent, my utility, etc., and provide the appropriate documentation. Now, at this point of the game, because you're just coming in as an applicant, you can just put a small bit of information if you are choosing to do the indirect cost. But I will request further detail if you do become, a grantee, and at that time we can go over the information, which you already have, but you would upload into the grant for approval. The last thing that you'll be asked to do, and because we're going on to the next page, is your vendor information. Now, because you've gone into New Jersey Start, you've already created your page there. You'll be asked to enter your vendor ID. Now, New Jersey Start is so good that even though I have a million vendor numbers popping here, there should really only be one for your organization directly linked to you that will pop up, and you'll just select that, save it, and you're done. Okay, so now obviously we know my application has very mistakes, but look at me, I'm going to try and pull a fast one. I'm going to scroll down to status options. I'm ready to submit. But look what happens. Sage populates all my mistakes and errors, the things that I haven't done in the grant. So I know I have to go back, complete my applicant information page, my Schedule A, my collaborative application attachment. Sage is telling me all that stuff. So there I go. I back out of that. So once I address all those errors, I can come back here, and provided they're all taken care of, I'll have a successful submission of my application. Now, one other thing I just want to show you too. This fun little ribbon of Sage has so many things. And once you get into it, once you get more familiar with Sage, you can take the time to explore. But there's just 2 tabs I want to point out to you. At any time, you can click on document validation, which is down here at the bottom. And again, that shows your errors that are not yet done in the grant. You can also click on the notes of the application, and there are no notes in this grant, but I did write a little note to myself. I must add fringe rate before submission. Now, these notes at one point, or for any, and this is for existing grantees and new grantees alike, if there's any correspondence or any back and forth with the application, or if you're an approved grantees for your program reports or your expense reports, if I'm sending you back any notes, I'm including them in this section. So if you ever get anything back from me, you can always refer to that notes section for what I'm looking for. Now, a lot of times I'll try to send it in an email too, but we're trying to get to the point that most of those notes will now be included, just in the notes section. So you can always go back and refer to them at any times, as opposed to, scrolling through a zillion emails. So we'll pretend that I went ahead, successfully submitted my application. Everybody sit tight, and you'll hear from us. David, what is our actual date that we're hoping to notice?
June 3rd.
So hopefully by June 3rd, you'll know the status of your application. You can always, you won't see a status change until we actually make the award. So once you submit your application, you'll just see it's an application submitted. So that, my friends, in a nutshell, is how to complete a FY24 Sage application.
Great. Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
Could you just stop sharing your screen and I'll take
Oh,
over?
sure, good.
Yep. Thanks. Okay, let me take back over. Okay. Can everybody see the slide deck?
Yes, should be able to. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline, for that Sage demo. I just want to say that we know there's a lot of components that go into creating an application for a state contract and a state grant. Our team is here to help. The contract process is a back and forth. So if you end up making a mistake on your budget, it's not the end of the world. We will work with you to rectify those things before we move into the contract period on the grant. So just do your very best to complete all the elements. reach out to us at the caregrant@dol.nj.gov if you have questions, and we could do our best to help troubleshoot things along the way. Great. So as we wrap up, I'm going to cover some expectations and next step, and then we'll move into Q&A real quick. First, the contract process. As I mentioned, we're here to support each grantee. And this process is the process of finalizing your deliverables and your budgets for the contracts. It typically happens in June and July. It involves a call with our Grant Care Grant team to review the documents and budgets that you uploaded. Once grants are awarded, we will have a required post-award TA session. We will also have quarterly meetings with all of our grantees. There will also be required and optional trainings on the programs and laws for programmatic and outreach staff on your grant. And then for reporting, we will have quarterly program reports as well as monthly financial reports. The grant is on a reimbursement basis, so you have to complete your monthly financial report to get reimbursed for the work. And then finally, we do site visits. They are optional, but we do encourage them as it helps our team better understand your work and the progress that you're making. And finally, here are some post-award requirements for collaboratives. A memo of understanding between a lead organization and the partners is required as a part of the contract process. Partner organizations must also attend the post-award technical assistance workshop, which I mentioned, and required trainings. And lead organization is responsible for completing and meeting all grant contract requirements. As for next steps, we suggest making time to read and review the NGO as soon as possible. It can be found on the New Jersey Department of Labor website at nj.gov/labor/grants. I'll ask one of my colleagues to drop maybe a link in the chat to it. And then you also, if you go to the page itself, you want to look for the FY24 tab and then navigate to the Care Grant subheading. We will be collecting questions and posting the responses for public view. Please submit your questions if you have them after this session, to caregrant@dol.nj.gov by March 15th. We will post answers by March 22nd. If an answer to a question is already in the NGO, we will likely direct you to that place in the question and answer document we upload next week. The application interest form, as a reminder, is due April 1st. Once the form is submitted, you will be granted access to Sage. Applications are due April 3rd by 11:59 p.m. They will be scored by a panel and recommendations will be made to the New Jersey Commissioner of Labor for approval. And the department seeks a diverse array of grantees, and we aim to ensure that our efforts are not duplicated among focused populations, industries, and geographic scope. And finally, as I mentioned just before, applicants will be noted in early June, by June 3rd, the latest. Okay, so thank you for attending the info session. We hope you'll consider applying for the opportunity, and we look forward to reviewing your applications. As I mentioned, we'll post the recordings to the session as well as the slide deck on the FY24 Care Grant webpage. And we also have a short and optional survey that we ask you to complete to help improve our future presentations on the Care Grant. I'll ask my colleague to drop a link in the chat to the survey. And with that, I also have some links here to the websites I mentioned earlier, the My Leave Benefits, My Sick Days, My Work Rights, and My Unemployment. So feel free to use those as well to research more about the program areas. And with that, we can use the remaining time we have for question and answer. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. And I know we've been keeping track of the questions, so I'm just going to pull those up real quick. 1 second. Great. So I have a couple of questions here one about Sage. It's is the Sage platform we use for the application the same current grantees use for reporting? And the answer to that is yes. It is the same Sage, but it's also important to note that there are different Sages for different departments in the state of New Jersey. So you have to use the NJDOL Sage specifically. Will the presentation be shared with us? Yes, we will. Like I said, we'll be posting all of these materials on the NJDOL website in the coming days. We hope to get those uploaded by Wednesday. So we have another info session tomorrow. So we'll hold that session, and then whichever one we feel is a better recording, we'll upload that one for you all to reference as well. Let's see. Does this grant help educate pregnant factory workers who are undocumented? And then related, there's another one. What about domestic workers? I think that is also probably in reference to the focus population. Yes, the grant does cover those populations. It should be noted that each has its own set of sort of eligibility or requirements under the various laws. So for example, you need a valid social security number to apply for temporary disability insurance and family leave insurance. So, but it is a covered focus population, and doing outreach and education to them on these programs is allowable. There's another one regarding the Temporary Workers Bill of Rights. Are you looking for employer education and outreach to be geared towards temporary help agencies or the employers who are connected to them, or both, or neither? I think we'd be open to seeing an outreach strategy that is engaged to both or either, or to the workers themselves. I think we're open to seeing all possibilities there. Employers and agencies are, as I mentioned, covered populations for the grant. So yes. Let me see. Am I missing? There's one here. What ID? Okay. Let's see. Do current grantees need to complete an interest application? It took me right to the application in Sage. Yes, we're asking you to complete the form itself. So if you use the link and complete the form, just to be equitable and gather all the information in one place from every potential applicant. So even if you're a current grantee, we ask you to complete the application interest form. I think there's a separate process on the back end for us giving you access to the application itself if you're a current grantee, but we still need you to complete the application interest form itself. And I'll just ask Lance or Caroline if you can just drop that link into the chat again, that would be helpful. And I'm just going to hang out here for a bit and continue to answer questions. You know, feel free to drop off at any time. Hope you found this information helpful. Yeah, I see some more coming in. Can you do an individual grant proposal and be a subgrantee on a collaborative grant proposal, or only one proposal connected to an organization? I see that question there. That is not something I am aware of right now. So I'm going to go take that question back to my colleagues here at the Department of Labor and check. I think it's a really great question, and we'll make sure that it gets included in a Q&A document that we post next week. Apologies for not having an answer right now, but I think that's the first time we've had that request, and I can understand why somebody might want that answer, but I just don't have that readily available to me at the moment. Sorry. Is this a cost reimbursement contract? Will the DO provide advances? And if not, what is the average turnaround time to process reimbursement? So I just saw Caroline come off mute, so I'm going to assume she wants to answer that one.
I would on the expense reports, you would report your grantee expenses monthly. Now, provided I move them to David and David approves them, they then go to finance and accounting. So that could take like a day or two just for that to happen. Usually once finance and accounting has it, if you have set your account up for electronic transfer, you should have your funds within 3 days.
Great. Is there a max number of groups allowed in a collaborative grant? I don't believe we have a max, but I think, Caroline, do you want to talk maybe, do you have any suggestions or answers on like what you'd consider would qualify for a subgrantee versus maybe like a vendor?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're specifically looking to do. We've had as many as 6, but one thing to keep in mind, because you're actually wearing the grant manager hat, you want to make sure you have the capacity to undertake something like that. That would be my only suggestion, because you're going to be managing those multiple collaboratives, because that'll be actually part of your expense and your programmatic reporting.
I see another one. Is it possible to be awarded for less than the requested amount? Yes, it is. We receive a lot of requests for the available fund, and there's, limited resources for each of the 5 areas. Fortunately, the grant program has increased the amount it awards every year. So the hope is that by increasing the amount, we can limit the amount that we reduce you. But as I also mentioned earlier, we go through a work plan and budget and deliverable modification process when we're completing the grant. So during that period, our team will be working with you to modify your budget given the award amount and to readjust your deliverables to be more achievable given what you were awarded. Let's see. So that means that a grantee must have cash flow at least 30 days of expenses before reimbursement. Caroline, do you want to take that one?
I'm sorry.
I think it's a response to the reimbursement. So that means a grantee must have the cash flow for at least 30 days of expenses before reimbursement.
Yes, because we're only on cost reimbursement. We only reimburse based on expenses generated.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another one. Can you explain vendors as collabs with for-profits? Reentry clients are one of my focus groups. Is that group eligible for training? So I think I think they're 2 separate questions. Do you want to take the first one, vendors as collaboratives, or talk about like how vendors can be vendors for single or collaboratives can be for-profit entities? So do you want to just talk about that a little bit, Caroline?
The for-profit thing, I'll have to look into a little bit deeper. As far as the vendor would be coming in to do one specific component for you. Maybe just, doing trainings only, and they're, charging you specific, a fixed fee, to do a train the trainer or something like that. But the collaboratives with the for-profit, I need a little bit more information on. I'm not sure I understand what that means with the
I think it
maybe
was
if whoever
Claudine
dropped that
Archer.
in.
If we didn't answer your question, or you feel like we didn't get at what you were trying to answer, get an answer to,
Just
either
need a little more information.
elaborate or you can follow up by
Yeah.
email with our team too. Reentry clients are one of my focus groups. Is that group eligible for training? Yes, it would. I think, knowing what I know about reentry clients, I think there are definitely ways in which they overlap with other sort of like broad categories of focus populations. So I would just encourage you to revisit the NGO, review the guidelines for the focus population, and I can see how they might fall under maybe a low paid category for reentry. But your focus population, the reentry clients better than I do. So I would just say reference the NGO. And if you feel that they also qualify, given like some of the categories in there, onto the focus population, we're definitely open to hearing the case about categories of workers that we didn't consider and list specifically in the NGO. Let's see. Can you elaborate on indirect costs? And then there's negotiated rate ? And if consultants, non-staff can be used.
Okay, indirect costs. You would know if you had an indirect cost. It is something you would have had to request. I believe it's the Treasury with the state of New Jersey. It's usually, institutions of higher education, i.e., such as Rutgers, for example, has a higher indirect cost than 10%. If you do not have a negotiated rate, the max that you can take for indirect costs is 10%. Yes, you can use consultants on your grant. We would consider a consultant in the vendor role. And again, they would have to provide similar information to what you would be providing for your subgrantees. We would need to see the letter of commitment, the budget, and the work plan that you would be working with your consultant.
Should a first-time applicant submit a single or collaborative application? That's really up to you. I think we would evaluate both like accordingly and according to the criteria in the NGO. A collaborative organization gives folks who are already doing similar work and have a shared vision an opportunity to come together and coordinate and do different strategies for outreach. It also allows organizations that, may have, a lot of partner organizations that are going to do a very discrete aspect of the work to fund them to do that work. So thinking of partner organization, the collaborative models that worked before, you can see in our NGO press release. We've had the Coalition to End Domestic Violence was a collaborative the first year, and they had a few domestic violence and sexual violence like organizations on their collaborative. And they across the state, and they all received a sub-grant and provided information to folks who were going through their intake process. So it just really depends on what you're thinking for the work. There's no should or could for first-time applicants. I think you can apply for a single or collaborative organization.
David, the only thing I would
Yeah.
add to that is anyone considering coming in as a collaborative for the first time, just be mindful that you are basically acting in the role as grant manager. So you will
Yes.
be responsible for the additional expense reporting review of your collaborative partner, as well as doing their programmatic reports. So if that's a route you're looking to go and you're confident that you have the capacity to do it, do be mindful of that, especially when you're crafting your budget.
Right. I don't think I see any other questions in the chat. We're going to hang out for a bit. If I missed your question, please repost it or re-up it in the chat. I'll make sure to address it. And our team is going to hang out for another 5, maybe 10 minutes if questions keep coming up. But if not, thank you for attending this session. Like I said, we'll post the recordings and the slide deck later this week, and we'll answer all the questions that were asked here, and any that come in through email in the question and answer document that gets posted next week. And apologies again to, I believe it was Lou from New Labor for not having an answer to his question on the applying both as a individual and a collaborative. I'll try to get an answer to that as soon as possible. And I just see a new chat. Will New Jersey Department of Labor Training? Yes, we provide a lot of trainings on the program. So there'll be a training on each one of the 5 programs in the post-award session. We do them in English and in Spanish. So if you have workers in your organization who are primarily Spanish speaking, or our ambassadors in your community, that would be helpful to have this training in Spanish. We organize those for our grantees as well. And we will be having this info session again tomorrow. If you really want to sit through it again, you can just register, and we'll send around a link again in the morning to any people who sign up at the last minute. Do you have flyers and handouts in Arabic? Yes, we do have some handouts in Arabic. So let me just grab the link real quick for you. So if you go to the CARE Grant webpage, we don't have everything in Arabic. So we're slowly amassing more and more translations in as many languages as possible. But we do have some things in Arabic. So I'll drop them in the chat. So if you go to this link, and then I think you go to, let me make sure I'm giving you the right instructions, the outreach materials tab. And then you'll see there's subheadings for paid family and medical leave, earned sick leave, work rights, and unemployment insurance. And under paid family and medical leave, you can see there's an Arabic handout that provides an overview. And then we have under earned sick leave, I believe we have the Know Your Rights brochure in Arabic as well. Know Your Work Rights brochure. And your earned sick leave brochure as well in Arabic. So there's some stuff. We don't have everything, but we're trying. But like I said during the presentation, we can work with an organization to request materials in certain language and do community review. That process does take a while. It takes a while to get a quality review, get a quality document, and get community review done. But if you have those capabilities and you're interested in helping the department expand our materials, like that is an allowable activity, and you should budget and draft your work plan accordingly. From time to time, the grantee submits the monthly reports and the census reports by the portal. What is the general review time from Caroline and David? So Caroline works very hand in hand with grantees throughout the grant cycle to get the expense reports reviewed and approved. So she is having conversations with grantees almost on the daily about their expense reports and making sure that they are where they need to be. Caroline, if you want to give a timeline, so once it's submitted and Caroline gives it the sign off, how long does it take to get approved through the Department of Labor and then through Treasury, Caroline? You're on mute.
This is how it usually goes. I'll approve your expense report and then I'll be like, hey, David, can you approve this?
Yes.
So we're basically, we try to, David's great. If I have it done in the morning, he'll have it approved for me by the afternoon. And provided, we make the cutoff date, it'll go over to finance and accounting. Probably the next day, they're very on top of things too. They'll then process it. And that usually, again, with the electronic transfer and going through New Jersey Start, about 3 days if you set up the electronic transfer for your funds, which I strongly recommend to everyone, that at this point that you have your funds transferred electronically as opposed to, a paper check.
Yeah. So yeah, like there can often be like a back and forth between Caroline on the fiscal side and the staff managing the fiscal side of the grant. But once it gets Caroline signs off on it, and usually when Caroline signs off on it, I know there's going to be no issues. So then I approve it same day, and then like Caroline says, it could take a few business days to get it approved through our finance and accounting, and then Treasury, and then over through NJ Start into your organization.
Yeah, and if I see that something's being held up or whatever for whatever reason, I will reach out to you as a grantee, especially not every grantee can afford to go extended periods without grant funds. So we want to get you paid as soon as you complete the work and you turn in your expense reports. We want to pay you promptly for all your efforts on the CARE grant.
I see another one. If the grant submission is a collaboration of 3 to 4 organizations, would you still expect us to request about 200,000, or can we request more to account for the work of each organization? You can request more. That is certainly allowed. I think the biggest award, and this is public knowledge, we released it through a press release last year, is I think we made an award of almost $300,000 last year to a collaborative with 6 organizations. So you can request more, and we will consider those. Those were just general guidelines about where organizations typically come in. Like I said, this is the 3rd round of funding we've released, and typically we were awarded in the $50,000 to $200,000 range. That is typically where awards come in. Any other questions? Like I said, we'll hang out for a few more minutes. You can drop them in the chat, or if you have anything that comes to mind afterwards, like I said, just email us at caregrant@dol.nj.gov.